Tonight's story unfolds under flashing club lights, whispered rumors, and the quiet burn of pride and betrayal. This isn't about headlines or breaking news. It's a dramatized retelling, a what-if story about three powerful names in hip-hop and pop culture: Glorilla, Angela Simmons, and Yo Gotti. It's a story about what happens when loyalty blurs with emotion, when success and power mix with jealousy and pride, and when one unexpected encounter turns an ordinary night into a legend whispered across social media. It was a warm Memphis night, one of those humid evenings where the air feels electric, where every club in the city is pulsing with bass and ambition. At Lux, the most exclusive spot downtown, the night was alive. Champagne bottles glowed in the hands of promoters, flashes from cameras sliced through the dark, and VIP sections overflowed with celebrities and rising stars. Among them was Glorilla, hip-hop's unstoppable force, the young queen carving her name into an industry that had long underestimated her. She had spent months touring, performing in city after city, feeding off the energy of crowds who knew every lyric. But despite the fame, despite the cameras and the lights, something heavy weighed on her mind. Whispers. For weeks, she had been hearing them. Quiet suggestions that something was going on between her mentor and label head Yo Gotti and the glamorous entrepreneur Angela Simmons. It wasn't the first time she'd heard talk about him, but this one hit different. This one felt real. And on this night, when a friend messaged her saying they'd seen Yo Gotti and Angela together at Lux, Glorilla didn't hesitate. She wasn't one to sit at home and scroll through rumors. She believed in facing things head-on. Just after midnight, the doors to Lux opened and Glorilla stepped inside. She wasn't dressed for attention, but she commanded it anyway. Every head turned as she walked in, the kind of energy that filled a room without trying. Her entourage followed close behind, but their presence faded in her shadow. She didn't smile. She didn't stop. She scanned the room with calm, focused precision, the way someone looks when they already know what they're going to find. And then she saw them. In a roped-off VIP booth near the DJ, Yo Gotti was seated comfortably, surrounded by laughter and conversation. Next to him, shining under the club lights, was Angela Simmons. The chemistry between them, subtle but undeniable, was enough to freeze Glorilla in place. She didn't need confirmation. The sight alone was enough. Without a word, she started walking toward them. What happened next would become the kind of moment that people would talk about long after the music stopped. The mood in the club shifted the instant Glorilla reached their section. Those close enough to see the look in her eyes fell silent. Even the bass seemed to soften as she approached the VIP booth. There were no loud arguments, no shouting, just quiet intensity, the kind that cuts deeper than words, the kind that makes everyone nearby hold their breath. From across the room, it looks like a conversation, but those watching closely could read the emotion in their faces. Glorilla's expression carried a mixture of disbelief and hurt. Angela's was guarded, composed, and Yo Gotti's was caught somewhere in the middle, part regret, part defense, part realization. For several tense moments, the trio stood locked in silent communication, their body language telling a story that didn't need to be spoken. Then, slowly, Glorilla turned and walked away. There was no scene, no physical altercation, just silence, the kind that echoes louder than any argument. After Glorilla left, the energy in the club shifted dramatically. The air grew tense, the laughter faded, and the whispers began to ripple through the crowd. People who had pretended not to notice were now texting, recording, or posting cryptic captions about what they had just seen. Angela stayed seated for a moment, maintaining her composure. She didn't chase after Glorilla, and she didn't try to explain anything to anyone. She just sat there, still and calm, letting the moment settle. Yo Gotti, meanwhile, leaned back in his seat, silent and unmoving. The flash of realization had crossed his face that no matter how private he thought he'd been, perception was everything. And tonight, the perception was bad. Within minutes, the entire club's atmosphere changed. The energy turned awkward, curious, and electric all at once. The DJ, sensing something had happened, switched the playlist to a slower track, but it didn't help. Everyone knew something had gone down. They just didn't know what. Outside, under the glow of the streetlights, Glorilla stood next to her black SUV, her hands clenched in silent fury. She wasn't just angry. She was hurt. She had always considered herself unshakable, someone who didn't need anyone's validation. But this moment hit differently. It wasn't about love, not exactly. It was about loyalty, the quiet expectation that the people who help you rise won't be the same ones to make you fall. Her driver opened the door, but she didn't get in right away. She just stared out over the empty street, thinking about how quickly things could change in this industry, how alliances, friendships, and relationships could crumble with a single misunderstanding or moment of weakness. She knew that by morning, social media would be on fire. There would be clips, captions, assumptions, and 100 false narratives. But she also knew one thing: she wouldn't let it break her. By sunrise, the story had already gone viral. Blurry videos and snippets from the nightclub were all over social media. Glorilla confronts Angela Simmons over Yo Gotti became the headline of the moment. The internet split into sides almost immediately. Some people sided with Glorilla, praising her for standing up for herself and not letting anyone play her. Others defended Angela, saying she had every right to talk to whoever she wanted, and that people were reading too much into things. And then there were those who blamed Yo Gotti, accusing him of being the silent cause of all the chaos. But none of them really knew what happened. The truth was that the entire encounter had lasted less than 5 minutes. 5 minutes that were magnified, replayed, and reinterpreted 1,000 different ways online. Meanwhile, behind the screens and hashtags, the 3 people at the center of it all stayed silent. In the days that followed, Glorilla poured herself back into her work. The studio became her therapy, the mic her confessional. Every emotion she felt that night, the confusion, the disappointment, the pride, found its way into her lyrics. For her, this wasn't just about a man or a moment. It was about learning, again, how to navigate the cutthroat world of fame. She knew that in her line of work, vulnerability could be seen as weakness, and silence could be mistaken for guilt. But she also knew that she didn't owe explanations to anyone. Glorilla had built her reputation on authenticity, being raw, real, and unapologetic. And now, she was determined to use the pain of that night not as a setback, but as fuel. Angela Simmons, on the other hand, handled the situation with quiet restraint. She didn't post cryptic messages, she didn't do interviews, and she didn't respond to the noise online. She'd been in the public eye long enough to know that silence often speaks louder than any statement. Still, she couldn't ignore how the confrontation had made her feel. For all her calm composure, Angela was human too, and the thought of being misjudged or painted as a villain weighed heavily on her. But instead of feeding into the chaos, she redirected her focus to her work, her businesses, her brand, her peace. She believed that time, not words, would clear her name. As for Yo Gotti, he didn't say much publicly either. He understood the rules of the game too well. In his world, attention, even negative attention, could be both a blessing and a curse. Privately, though, he reflected on how a simple night out had spiraled into a public storm. Maybe he had been careless. Maybe he had underestimated how deeply Glorilla felt about loyalty, or how easily people could twist something innocent into something scandalous. He knew that every action carried a cost, and this one, he realized, might have cost him more than he expected. A week later, the noise began to fade. New headlines took over, new scandals replaced the old, and life moved on. But for those involved, that night lingered in their memories, not as a dramatic fight, but as a moment of clarity. However, it was a humid night in Memphis, the kind where the air vibrates with energy and every neon sign seems to pulse with rhythm. Lux, one of the city's most exclusive nightclubs, was alive. Music pounded through the walls, bass shaking the floor as champagne bottles reflected the glow of club lights. Glorilla arrived first, moving through the crowd with an unshakable presence. She had just finished a string of shows, her name on the rise, her confidence soaring. But tonight, something felt different. A lingering tension pulled at her, a whisper in the back of her mind she couldn't ignore. Her instincts had been right. Somewhere in the VIP section, the person she trusted most, the one she admired and looked up to, was with someone else. Someone dazzling, confident, and impossibly composed. Angela Simmons. Glorilla spotted them instantly. The music, the laughter, the flashes of cameras, they all seemed to fade into the background. She froze for a brief second, absorbing the scene. Yo Gotti sat casually, his demeanor calm yet deliberate. Angela leaned close, the energy between them undeniable. It was a tableau of quiet dominance. No one was shouting, no one was arguing, but Glorilla didn't need words. The truth of what was happening hit her like a thunderclap. Every step she had taken that night led to this moment. Every whisper, every rumor she had brushed aside, every late-night thought of loyalty and trust, it all converged here in the blink of an eye. She approached, but not to speak. This confrontation wasn't about words. It was about presence, observation, and realization. The room seemed to hold its breath. Eyes followed her. Cameras clicked, but no one could capture the weight of the moment. In that brief, charged pause, the story became clear. Yo Gotti wasn't hiding. He had made a choice, and it wasn't her. The scene radiated a quiet inevitability. Angela's calm composure contrasted with Glorilla's simmering intensity. The truth was unmistakable, even without a single sentence exchanged. For everyone else in the club, it was just another night of celebrity drama. For Glorilla, it was the exact moment she understood that some connections, no matter how strong, could shift in an instant. Glorilla didn't scream or create a scene. She left the VIP section slowly, deliberately, her gaze steady but filled with unspoken emotion. The energy around her shifted, whispers rippled through the crowd, and social media users later speculated endlessly about what had happened. Angela remained composed, the subtle queen of the room. She didn't reach out or smile triumphantly. She simply existed in the moment, quietly aware that this night would be remembered. Yo Gotti stayed seated, a figure caught between decision and consequence. His choice was made, but he couldn't escape the tension that lingered like smoke in the air. Outside the club, under the streetlights, Glorilla paused before entering her car. Her mind replayed every detail, every glance, every step that had led her here. It wasn't just about jealousy or pride. It was about understanding boundaries, understanding choices, and acknowledging that even those we trust most can surprise us. In that quiet moment, she made a decision. She wouldn't retaliate. She wouldn't spread rumors. she would carry this experience forward, turning it into fuel for her art and her ambitions. The night had tried to define her, but she refused to let it do so. By morning, the event had already spread across social media. Fans speculated, influencers posted clips, and every angle was analyzed. Memes were made, captions were written, and hashtags began trending, yet none of them knew the truth. The truth wasn't in words or videos. It was in the silent understanding that some choices are personal, and some confrontations leave marks that no camera can capture. For Yo Gotti, the incident was a reminder that public perception is everything, and personal decisions can never be fully private in the age of instant social media. For Angela, it reinforced her ability to navigate complex dynamics with grace and composure. And for Glorilla, it became a lesson in strength, independence, and emotional resilience. Days passed and life continued, but the night left its imprint. Glorilla returned to the studio, pouring every ounce of emotion into her music. Her tracks carried subtle hints of betrayal, resilience, and empowerment, a testament to the strength she had found within herself. Angela, meanwhile, focused on her brand and her business ventures, maintaining her calm and letting her actions speak louder than speculation. Yo Gotti reflected privately, weighing the consequences of choices that affected not just relationships, but reputations. For Glorilla, it was a reminder of her own power and independence. For Angela, a lesson in how quickly perception can shift. And for Yo Gotti, a warning about the thin line between business and emotion. The city had already forgotten, but for them, the echoes of that night would always hum beneath the surface. A quiet reminder that fame magnifies everything: the love, the tension, the pain, and the pride. In the end, this story, like so many in the world of fame, wasn't about who was right or who was wrong. It was about how fragile trust can be, how fast loyalty can twist into resentment, and how the brightest lights can reveal the deepest cracks. The confrontation may have lasted only minutes, but its shadow lingered long after. Because in the world of power, music, and celebrity, truth is rarely what it seems, and perception is everything. This story is a work of fiction inspired by hip-hop culture and public personas. All names are used in a dramatized, creative context.